Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Advancing with Watercolor. I'm Gary Tucker, and in the past series, we've been looking at different places in France. In the past couple of weeks, we've been looking in particular at Paris and some of the scenes that you will find in walking the streets, walking down the Seine River, or through the cathedrals. This week, we're going to focus on developing a scene of a café in Paris, a scene in which a young woman is sitting at a table, reading a book, or sketching, thinking about her day. We're going to be developing two paintings today in our studies, focusing on the shapes and the surrounding color that we see in this particular café. So let's pick up our brushes and head over to the painting table. Big shapes. They're kind of evenly matched now. The hand is just a little big. That's okay. We learned something. Well, this is a drill that's focused on shape and brushwork. We've been talking about brushwork throughout the series, and what I'd like to do is make a connection between the shapes we create and some ways to think about the brush. We're going to start with a tonal exercise and then try a variation of that with color. I've taped down a piece of paper and I have a piece of tape running through the middle. So I want to focus on, maybe I'll do the tonal study on the left side and a color version on the right side. For the tonal study, I'm going to be using a single color, maybe the sepia. And this isn't really a developed tonal study. It's more of a study focused on the big shapes of our composition. And this is one of the keys to composing, I feel, is perceiving the big general shapes, which takes some effort because we're very good at, seeing detail, seeing nuance, and that intrigues us also. But this idea of seeing the big picture, the big shapes first, I think is an important one. In today's subject, we're looking at an interior. And I'm going to do this exercise without any pencil drawing. I think it's a good exercise, and you might even find it as a good way of working. And I want to show you how I mix up the color and get started. So I have some medium strength value first. Here's the medium strength. But I'm going to add a lot of water so that this is really just the palest of colors. And from that, I'm going to start to paint the bright shapes in my painting, the light shapes. Okay, so let's start with, for example, the window. Probably the lightest shape in the composition. And it's pretty easy to paint this window because it's a simple shape, rather simple. And it occupies, a large part of the piece. The second shape I'm going to paint is the tabletop. which is an extension basically of this light shape. So you see the light shapes are connected, and there might be some other further shapes that are part of this also. But these are the ones that I feel are important. And painting them, even if the color is darker than we really want it to be, is good, because now we can see that as a positive rather than just painting around it. This is a little more of a direct way to paint the subject. Good. So the second part of this, I'm really making the color much thicker, sort of a maximum contrast. This is, in my feeling, a two-tone painting, and that makes it easier, somewhat easier. So these shapes, very much connected, and I feel now I can just block in. Look how I use the brush here, side of the brush, to get that profile of the side of the café. Let's go underneath the table. And there's some advantage to work with the brush instead of with the pencil in this case. I feel the advantage is that I can express these elements as sort of abstract shapes. At this stage, the painting is quite abstract, isn't it? We're not even quite sure what it is we're rendering, but this first statement, this initial statement, is quite important in the life of the painting to kind of get this basic sense established first. So we've covered the interior of the painting, we have the tabletop. Let's just take a paper towel, because I want to make sure that this is relatively dry. And I'm going to just lift the color so that there's only a ghost of color. But this has a positive effect of drying out the painting. So at this stage, we notice the big shapes. They're kind of evenly matched now, and I doubt if it will stay that way. What I mean by evenly matched is there seems to be an equal proportion of light and dark. So let's start to build into that. There's another connected shape here of my figure, the Mademoiselle, who is sitting in the cafe, sketching or reading. Just going to reshape that a little bit. And at this point, she's only visible as sort of a profile. We just see her head starting to appear, and that's not even fully formed yet. It's just a suggestion, but it breaks this strong vertical line, which I think makes her more of a positive subject, breaking that line. And we have a window pane, a major window pane, about through here. Minor pane through here. Again, kind of connecting those darks. Second. First, let's kind of grab, we have some stuff on the table, don't we? Let's put those simple shapes that are kind of on the table, cups, maybe a napkin holder, sort of blocky shapes. We have some paper on the table. And we have another skinny window pane. So the shape is getting more complex, but it's all based on that first impression, Okay, let's move forward. I feel the energy kind of escapes out of the side of the painting. So I'm going to add a wall where there isn't a wall. See if I like that better. Just a little strip through here. Kind of close off this side. That's a little better because it concentrates the light a little more. Same with above. Let's continue this. We're working with just the strong dark now. And we can cast some reflections. On the table. That's one of the highlights for me, is what's going on the tabletop. So you see I can switch quickly between the tip of the brush and maybe even a little reflection from her. The tip of the brush and the side of the brush. It still feels a little weak up here. Let's use some of that stuff from the outside. We see a canopy. We see some distant tables and chairs. Maybe through here. There's a chair outside, another chair outside, maybe a figure outside sitting at a table. As long as we feel it's behind the glass. So here I'm introducing a secondary shade. We have a primary contrast, dark against light. And then we have some intermediary contrast. I do like the awning at the top, so I'm going to put that in as well. Using that intermediary contrast. Now it's starting to get more complex, but look at how this part is coming out a little more clearly. Okay, still thinking about primary shapes, big shapes. We haven't gotten into really any detail yet. There is plenty of detail we can add, but let's dark to the interior, for example, across the front of the table. Coming down, joining to the other abstract shapes below. I keep it intentionally abstract there. Let's add one more of these very dark elements to some of the stuff on the table. What that does is it sets up the reflections with a little more accuracy. Make the objects on the table a little darker. Also pushes back against the outside. So it's really starting to come alive in the interior. Oh, well, we can add some features to our figure. Hand and a pencil. I'm just thinking some features, some very simple basic features. So what have I added here? The hollows of the eyes, a little bit of the nose, a suggestion for the mouth, chin, and the head might be a little big for this particular work. Put the shoulder a little higher here. The head is just a little big. That's okay. We learned something. And then I'm going to connect that stronger dark below. Thicker paint. You notice how it's getting much thicker in terms of its quality. We can still go thicker, but for this study, I think this is going to be plenty. And yeah, not finishing in sort of an abstract way, a manner also. A little suggestion of the chair, perhaps a painting on the wall behind. Just make a square. Join this to the other darks. And if I want to, I guess I can experiment, just make the head slightly smaller. What I mean by that is reposition the features, such as the eyes, the nose, the mouth. Just reposition them a little bit better. Okay, this is pretty good. One thing I want to show you is we've painted mostly with the mid-tone and the dark tone. And even though we painted the lights in the beginning, they're largely brought into focus because of the darks that we painted. So let's add some highlights. We do have some highlights that we can use, such as a highlight on the back of the chair, a highlight coming down the back of the hair as well. Maybe a highlight on a hand that's holding down the book. Highlight in a coffee cup. These are just dots and dashes. Strokes, of course, they are important strokes. But we're experimenting a little here. This is where the shoulder comes down. I want to get some semblance of that if I want to extend a light. It's not hard to do. And it all seems pretty harmonious, the color relation and the tonal relation. So this is a very basic statement of our painting today, which is sitting in a cafe. We're sketching someone who's sketching the cafe scene, or could be reading a book, or just enjoying the scene. Now, let's think about doing this in a color version. Again, we're going to try and establish the painting in a similar way, which means we're going to start with the lighter colors. And I'm just going to use a warm palette. In this case, I'm going to be using yellow ochre. I'm going to use some cadmium orange red, and I'm going to use some alizarin, and I'm going to use my sepia. 4 colors, all warm colors, by the way. If I point out these colors, yellow ochre is pretty light. The cadmium orange red also pretty light. Alizarin is quite dark. Sepia is also quite dark. So I create the tonal range by moving to those other colors. These are all of the same family. Starting with my yellow ochre. And because they're of the same family, warm hues, there's going to be sort of an instant harmony. There's my yellow ochre. I'm going to start in the same manner. Very light. And I'm going to paint in the same process, or try to anyway. So we see our window, for example. Let's paint that shape. As a shape, using the side of the brush. Doesn't matter if it's a perfectly clean shape. There can be some room for error. We're going to cover it with darker colors, so we can do corrections then too. So there's the shape of the window, right? Very light. We can make it lighter still with a little, or by lifting. You know, we can return in the same way that we did our tonal study, lift some of this out should we want it to dry. No problem. Let's create, I'm just going to use water for the tabletop. I want to get a nice shape. The shape is really taking precedence in this piece, the shapes, the combined shapes. So we try to get a nice ellipse there. An ellipse is what is going to communicate the shape of our tabletop. So I believe you can all see it's just a ghost of a color here. Next, we want to move to that deep mid-tone. Remember how we surrounded the window with darker colors? Let's do that. We're going to use sepia and alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson's a powerful color, as you can see. I'm mixing them together here with a good bit of water. And I'll start right at the top here. Very strong, as you can see. As my brush runs out of paint, I want to take advantage of that, and so I add a dry brush mark. Right, you see that nice dry brush, that edge, a broken edge. Oops. Made it a little bigger than I wanted. That's all right. Watercolor is a constant state of recovery. There's an oops moment, then there's a fixing moment. And most of us are aware of this by now. And the key is not to really panic. In fact, more and more, I believe it's helpful to learn how to do that, how to recover, how to make the most of that. Let's make this just a little smaller. Like so. We're using all the same mixture here, sepia and alizarin crimson. Just an abstract shape down here. Don't worry about what's going on below the table. Just leave a few gaps so that we can see some light coming through. They're not significant areas, so you don't really have to worry about that too much. Should it be pleasing to the eye? Yes, it should be somewhat interesting. Let's start to place stuff on the tabletop. In the same manner, I'm not going to try to deviate or improvise too much. I just want some simple blocky shapes that describe some stuff on the tabletop. Then I'm going to take some water, a little bit of this cadmium orange red. Feeling inspired. I guess this is where we're improvising, is in our color work. Right, there we go. Let's provoke the watercolor a little bit. And let's create go back to our deeper value of alizarin crimson, sepia. Let's get the side of our window here. Remember, this is kind of an add-on. It's not visible in the photograph, but it serves a purpose, I feel, to kind of contain the light, compress the light a little bit. Then I'm going to turn this on its side so that I can execute these window panes a little better. It's just ergonomically, it's a little easier to do it this way. And the tip, we'll do a small one, a little thick. It's okay. Okay, let's add our figure. I'm going to add a bit more this bright red to the face. Try to keep it the right size this time. Just about here. Bring it out a little further. About here. And yellow ochre and that cadmium orange red. Create the hair. Even if it's a little hard to see, it's okay. Work that down into the body. Well, of course, we're doing the human body, so it's a little challenging. Good. Yes, quite a bit smaller. Maybe it needs to be slightly bigger. Or the head, shoulders. It's always dangerous when you start making the figure bigger. Very easily it gets out of proportion, so we'll stop there. And that's good enough. I'm going to add some darks before I add the elements to the back here. And I'm using Alizarin Crimson, very strong. I'm also going to use my neutral tint. Alizarin Crimson and neutral tint. Look how strong that is. Let's get the edge of this table again. I always like to start with the edge of that table because it defines the tabletop in such a great way. More. I'm going to make this little box a little better, a little darker. I'm working on these elements because this part is dry. These are still a little wet there, so let's avoid that temporarily. Then we come down, place some vertical elements, just have fun here. This is a study, so we can play with it a little bit. That's what I'm doing. And I'm going to carry that up into the little bit behind the head. Okay, that area is dry. Let's put in the awning first. I'm going to use a red, but it's diluted. This is that cadmium orange red, but look how diluted it is. Make it a little bigger. Good. Let's put in a figure, also red. And this is sort of related to our figure inside, so we don't make it too big, just a little smaller. Some tables and chairs out here. Just showing the backs of the chairs and leaving a little strip for the tabletop. And so this is looking about right to me. That red color is really permeating the scene, which I like. There's more I want to do, but it's a little wet right now. So I'll just shape this again. Looks like I'm continuing to make this smaller and smaller. It's okay. No biggie. It is a major shape. That's why I gave it such a importance. And let's put some strong black through here. We can lift out the lights if we want. Wonder about the little reflection here. Okay. Let's add some highlights. And we're using the Jaune Brilliant, which is a... Hold on a second. Before I do that, I want to try a little bit of red through the face. So that can dry and we can add some features to it. Let's add some highlights. So all of this has been done so far with the warm hues. And I think we'll stay with that for this study. This is wet, but I'm going to add a little highlight there, as well as a little highlight on the top of the hair. Shoulder. This may be the chair here, the back of the chair. A little highlight in the front. Okay. Some highlights in the stuff on the tabletop. If your painting is still wet, it's okay. This is just a study, just to kind of prepare us for working with the larger piece. So we're being sort of inventive here. I think our inspiration, we can see it in our subject. If we look at the photo, we see the tabletop glowing as it is here. We can see what inspired this, but definitely we're enhancing that. We're making it a little more warm. We're making the interior very warm with that alizarin crimson and cad yellow. It's kind of too wet to work there. Let's flatten that out. We'll come back to this. Anything else we need to do? We need to let this dry before we address the features. Let's try a few touches of real bright red in our motif. It will just be accents, I think, nothing more than an accent. And we don't have to explain it like, oh, that's some sort of red pastry or anything, just dots and dashes. And what this does is it makes the color that's the warm hues that are grayed in the lower part of the painting, makes it come alive a little more. Let's put her hand maybe here. We'll let this dry. I wanted to fix this area first. I'm just going to put a little bit of a dark wash there, keep it sort of mysterious. No detail, just blend it in. Like that. We'll keep it like that and decide what to do with the features after it dries. Right, so tonal study, and the value of this is we start to see our subject in simple terms, simple shapes, whether they're light or dark. Within those light or dark shapes, we start to place smaller shapes of awning, figure, stuff happening below the tabletop, the figure, things on the tabletop, and the reflections. And we organize our painting based on shapes. We make adjustments. I felt that the window continuing to the left was a little too much, so I closed it off at the edge of the painting, concentrating the light, making it a little more of a powerful statement. I do that at the top too, coming down in this way so that there's a more of a interior feel by doing that. And we add the secondary shapes also as secondary values. So we've been working light and dark, light and dark. Then we add these secondary shapes to the light area, and we get a feeling of distance. These mid-tone shapes also concentrate the light on the table, making it just a little more positive. So my ghost here is still drying. Just wanted a little suggestion of the red there. This may be too powerful for the lower part of the painting. A little darker hair on this side. Simple shapes really are key to painting your scene with some fluency, some enjoyment. Okay, good. So, well, you might be tired. We've been working for a bit and we've done some complicated things, but at the same time, we've got a better idea how to paint our image.